What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Azariah Podcast. I'm Pedro. This show is about real people and their stories, the kind that shake you up and change you. We talk to people across different industries and hear their journeys, challenges, and what drives them. Coming to you from the Wolf Media Studio. Today, we're sitting down with Michael Zwaagstra. He's been teaching high school social studies in Southeast Manitoba for over 25 years. He's served on Steinbach City Council since 2006. He's written books on education reform, and he teaches theology courses at Steinbach Bible College. Recently, he announced he's seeking the PC nomination to become Steinbach's next MLA. Michael, thanks so much for being here. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing very well, Pedro, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's get started with your story. Growing up, your family.
Yeah, I was not born in Steinbach, but I have lived in Steinbach for a long time. My dad was an RCMP officer, so he had been transferred a few times, and so we lived in places like Winnipeg Beach when I was young, and then in Thompson, Manitoba when I was very young. I barely remember that. Okay. But it was in 1987 that we first moved to Steinbach. I was 11 years old at the time. Steinbach was a lot smaller back then. It was still just a town. And I developed a love for Steinbach right away. I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And so I did go away for university and for some other work for a little while, but I returned very quickly when I started teaching. And so I've been in Steinbach for the most part since 1987, with the exception of a few years when I was away for taking some education. Okay, excellent. So what shaped you? Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, it's I had some, obviously the influence of my parents, which was very positive. Schools were very positive. I had some excellent teachers, both at that time the Steinbach Junior High and also at the SRSS. I'll name a couple of them. My first grade 7 class, my first grade 7 teacher was Mr. Dale Sawatsky. It was actually his very first year of teaching, and many of your listeners will likely recognize his name. Excellent teacher, developed a great connection with him. Also developed a great connection in grade 8 with Ms. Irene Jansen. A lot of people remember her. Very tough academic standards. She's a good teacher to have if you want to make sure students learn how to write properly. Okay. High school, I had some excellent teachers. Bert Seuss, the librarian, was very patient in listening to me think through a whole lot of things in life. J.D. Lees, I took Canadian history and math with him, also an excellent teacher. Mr. David Reimer was an ELA teacher of mine, and there are many others, but those are just some examples of people in my younger years that played a positive role in my development.
So what drew you into teaching?
Well, it wasn't something I had planned on initially. In fact, throughout high school, I hadn't even thought about going into education. I was actually thinking of going into science and becoming a scientist. So I went to the University of Manitoba, enrolled in all science courses, and I discovered very quickly that actually I liked the idea of science more than actually doing the science. And I also didn't have some very good study habits at the time. So when you combine the fact that science wasn't really my field with the fact I had some poor study habits, I actually had to drop out that first year. But during that process, it's just suddenly hit me one day when I was in the car with some friends and I was driving back to Steinbach, and it just suddenly occurred to me, maybe I should become a teacher. And that very day, I remember it very well. It was back in late September of 1993. I went to the education faculty, looked into what would be involved in transferring into the Faculty of Education, and started making the arrangements. And so the following year, I went into the Faculty of Education, changed my focus to history and geography and political science, because I found that those were better suited to my areas of interest. And a few years later, I graduated with my education degree. So it was something that, frankly, happened very suddenly. It wasn't planned from the outset.
Okay, excellent. So you first got elected to City Council in 2006. What made you run for politics?
Well, I've been interested in politics for a long time, and that's at all levels. So I'm interested in federal politics, provincial politics, and also at the municipal level. And I had been involved in election campaigns, both federally and provincially. I had campaigned with former provincial member of Parliament Vic Taves, and had gotten to know him. I was also involved in current Steinbach MLA Kelvin Gertson's first campaign back in 2003. And it was around that time that I started thinking, maybe I could get involved and perhaps I could get involved at the municipal level. I mean, I care about my city. I'm very proud of Steinbach, and I thought it would be a neat opportunity to be part of the city council. I was very young back then. In 2006, when I first ran, I was only 30 years old, which is definitely on the young side for city councillors in Steinbach. But I figured that I was going to go for it, and so I had to do a lot of work. I had to print out a lot of pamphlets. I did a lot of door knocking. For basically 4 straight months, almost every evening and Saturday, I went out door to door. Over those few months, I went to about 4,000 homes and worked very hard. And I was very pleased to get elected in 2006. And so it was really a case of I was interested in serving my city, getting to know my city better, and I just felt that council would be a good way to do that.
Okay. So question, like a follow-up question on that, like, has your opinion changed or shaped since when you first ran? Like, you had an idea kind of what politics was like, black and white maybe, or how has it changed since?
Well, I would say that my fundamental philosophy or my political orientation, because obviously I'm a conservative. I mean, anyone who reads my writings will know that. Right. My overall philosophy, like the foundations, have remained essentially the same. But my way of going about things has actually changed quite dramatically. Okay. The members of council that were with me in my first term from 2006 to 2010 will remember me as being very young and frankly more than a little brash, arrogant, and I basically had the idea at the time that I could win any fight just by putting forward the force of my arguments, that I would just persuade, and that it didn't matter what other people in council thought. I was just going to push stuff through. And yeah, there were some things that I was able to get done and some things that I was able to sort of slow down that I wasn't in favor of. But I came to realize that that's not a good long-term approach, particularly at the municipal level, but frankly at all levels of government. Relationship is very important. You actually need to work with people. You need to make compromises when appropriate. And so I've really, especially over the last decade, I've really tried to shift my focus where I will still make my case and I will still try to argue my side forcefully if I think that it needs to be forcefully defended. But I've really tried to be a lot more collaborative and a lot more willing to hear other people out. And I know that those members of council back then, because I've talked to them since, and actually one member of council from back then, Jake Siemens, is still on council with me, and I know that he would attest as well that yes, personality-wise, I think I've changed from nearly 20 years ago when I started on council, and I think a lot of that is about growing up and maturing, and I had a lot of that to do at that point, and frankly, if you go even earlier, before I was 30, before I was in council, I was even more brash. I mean, I was frankly in university and in high school, like I would just shoot my mouth off and I'm just going to give my opinion no matter what, just going to force stuff through. And I'm very fortunate that people around me were as gracious as they were, particularly some of my high school teachers and even some of my university professors, because I look back and I frankly cringe at how, I guess, bullish I was on certain things, because life involves getting to know people and working together, and I found I can get a lot more done on council and frankly in other areas in life if I show a little bit of humility and am willing to work with others to get things done.
So becoming a deputy mayor, you've been since 2018, well, what's that been like?
Well, it's been a very good experience, and I should add that I was actually deputy mayor for 3 years even before that, because I've served with 2 mayors so far. Mayor Chris Gertzen from 2006 to 2018. So that would be 12 years, and then with Mayor Earl Funk from 2018 to the present. Okay. Both men I respect greatly, and that I've had a great working relationship with. They're different, they have different styles, and so with Mayor Chris Gertzen, I was deputy mayor for him for 3 years, and then in 2018, Mayor Earl Funk appointed me deputy mayor, and Mayor Funk really wanted to work in partnership. And so did Mayor Chris Gertzen. But the difference is that in 2018, Mayor Funk was brand new to his position, and I was a little more experienced in terms of being on council. And so we definitely, our strengths and weaknesses really went together quite well. And so we've really approached this as a partnership. He provides fantastic leadership to our city. And so a lot of my role as deputy mayor is about supporting the mayor, giving advice and feedback. And this is something I've done with both Mayor Funk and Mayor Gertzen, where behind closed doors often we have candid discussions and where I will give recommendations, always respecting the fact that at the end of the day, the mayor is the spokesperson for the city, and it is ultimately up to him to decide what direction to go as far as how he's going to represent the city. But it's just a lot about being a sounding board. Also, running council meetings at times. I mean, with both mayors, there have been times where they've been away, and then of course in those circumstances, then I'm chairing the meeting and having to take a direct leadership role in that regard. And frankly, also, especially starting in 2018, when we had some brand new members of council joining us, by that point I was a very experienced member of council, providing some support and mentorship to new members of council and helping them to learn the ropes as quickly as possible. And that was something that I also sought to do as a deputy mayor.
Okay, so you're one thing that you mentioned earlier, like learning how to collaborate with different people more, listening to people. Did you find that becoming deputy mayor, that was the next level of challenge to do that? Or
in many ways it was, because, and especially beginning in 2018, because in 2018 we had several new council members and a brand new mayor, and I was also back in the deputy mayor role. And so what happened then was that I really had to make sure that I stepped up and recognized that, okay, we have new members of council, we've got some experienced members, we had a new mayor, and so we need to work together and we need to get things done. And so I really, and I would still obviously argue my position. I still argue my position, but trying to ask more often, what's the human factor here? What is the, when we're talking about this organization, some organization that is asked for a grant or an organization that is asked to partner with the city. And, I try to sort of step back and say, what's the relationship angle here? How do we make sure that even if we're going to say no, how do we do it in a way where we don't damage the relationship? And that's something I wouldn't have thought of 20 years ago. Like, I didn't care about that sort of thing 20 years ago, and I do care about that sort of thing now. And certainly, being in the deputy mayor role, it does make things a bit more serious in the sense that this isn't a case of that. I'm just going to push for something just because it sounds interesting. Like, no, I need to do my due diligence and think this through and make sure I consult with other people before I just decide I'm going to try to advocate for something.
Okay, and I'm sure there's a challenge of that too. Like, you getting new council members in, and everybody, especially going to politics, a lot of people have the idea of, and maybe you had it too earlier. From my understanding, is you want to change the world, right? Like, you have the grand ideas, you want to change the world.
Yeah. A lot of people get elected to city council, and it's not just our council this happens, it's everywhere.
Right. In general, right?
You make a lot of promises and you get elected to council and you find out that, okay, there's a system here that we have to work within. Things don't happen that quickly most of the time. There's processes that have to be followed. It takes 3 readings to pass a bylaw, for example. Okay. We have to have public hearings on certain things, and we have to get approval from the provincial government on some other things, and we need to make sure we have the necessary finances that are available. We need to have staff provide us with recommendations before we just proceed in some major project. And so a lot of this is just about recognizing that things don't always happen that fast. And you can promise the world when you're running for council, or frankly for any level of government, but when you actually sit in those seats, you find that you are one of a group, and that yes, there are things you can get done, but nothing's going to happen if it's just you by yourself just saying, I want something here. You have to work within the system and work with the others, and that's how things get done.
Right. So let's go shift over to education. And the question is, what's wrong with our schools?
Well, you've taken the title of one of my books, which is called What's Wrong with Our Schools and How We Can Fix Them. And obviously, when you have a book title, you try to make it as catchy as you can.
Right.
And so there are many things that are right about our schools. I just want to make that clear. I mean, and particularly in the area that we live, we have excellent schools. We have excellent teachers. And, at the same time, in the book that I wrote and in my articles, I do critique some things in the broader education system, particularly at the provincial level. I have critiqued a lot of the things that are being taught in education faculties where teachers are trained. And so in terms of pinpointing some of the challenges that I see, I've long been an advocate of that we need to have a stronger focus on content knowledge and skill acquisition in schools. I'm a big proponent of memorization and the importance of that. And I don't simply mean just pure rote learning. I mean that it's important to have facts in your brain. You can't think critically if you don't have a basic knowledge base. I mean, pick a topic, and if you don't know something about that topic prior to being asked about it, you're not going to be able to think critically. It's
Right.
only if you actually know these things. And so I think our education system as a whole needs a stronger emphasis on knowledge and content. I support testing in both at the teacher-created level and also at the provincial standardized level. I think those are both important in terms of evaluating a student achievement. And one of my big concerns is that in education faculties where teachers are trained, a lot of these things are downplayed. And teachers are one of the most common sayings that you'll hear in a faculty of education is that a teacher should be a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage. I think that is largely or fundamentally incorrect because a teacher is not simply a guide. Yes, we do guide students, but we do have expertise. At least we should have expertise, and we should be willing to share that with students. Things like whole class instruction, standing in front of the room, not the whole time, but certainly for a portion of it, and clearly explaining things step by step to students so that way they understand it. And so to the degree to which we move away from those things, that's where I think we run into problems.
So this is kind of like just a follow-up question, Nick. So when you kind of explained it already, so education reform, like what I think you kind of alluded to that, what you're fighting for in that sense.
Yeah.
There's something more that you can...
Well, it'd be a number of things. I mean, I think curriculum guides as a whole, and the curriculum guides are the documents that teachers use to guide in terms of what they're teaching. It prescribes the things that students are supposed to learn. I would like to see curriculum guides have a stronger focus on content knowledge in all subjects, and I think that curriculum has moved. It's gotten a little too light in terms of some of the things that aren't in it that should be.
Okay.
I'd like to see a stronger focus on the importance of discipline. I think that teachers need to clearly be in charge of their classrooms, and principals need to be in charge of the schools. And that doesn't mean running it rigidly. It doesn't mean that it can't be student-centered, but it does mean that we have to have a culture of respect, and that teachers are authority figures, that they should be regarded as experts in terms of what they're teaching. And so students should come to school prepared to learn. And of course, we work with students where they're at. This is the reality of being in a public education system. But to the greatest degree possible, we need to have a culture where teachers are teaching the things that need to be taught, and students are learning those, and making sure that if there is misbehavior, that is dealt with clearly and forcefully, if it's particularly if it's very serious misbehavior.
So what would you say are the biggest battles in education today?
Well, I mean, a lot of these they're actually not new. Many of these battles have been going on, frankly, for well over a century. For the listeners who are interested in the history of the education battles, the book I'd recommend is Left Back. I believe the subtitle is A Century of Failed Education Reforms. That is by Diane Ravitch, a well-known American education historian. And basically in this book, Ravitch points out and summarizes the battle between and for lack of better terms, because these are loaded terms here, but sort of the difference between traditionalists, which is the side that I would identify with, and the constructivist side or the progressive side. Traditionalism, which I'm not thrilled about the term because it implies that we're just stuck in the past. But traditionalism basically says that there's prescribed knowledge that all students need to have. We need to make sure that we pass the knowledge on to students. We need to have, again, firm discipline in schools, and that students need to be held accountable for the work that they actually do. In a nutshell, that's the traditionalist philosophy that I would hold to in education. And then the progressive or the constructivist side tends to take the guide on the side approach, that the teacher is more of a facilitator of learning. Some will use the term an architect of learning, and that it's more about the project students are doing, and that the students should as much as possible guide the learning process, with the teacher more just facilitating. And that's at a philosophical level, there's your big divide. I mean, and this divide has been ongoing for a long time. It's not going to go anywhere because you're always going to have these different positions. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be all one or all the other. Even though I'm more on the traditionalist side, there's aspects of the constructivist or progressive side that I think can have value in some limited contexts. And similarly, the vast majority of teachers who are more progressive than I am, if you ask them, they're not going to deny that, well, of course you have to have some whole class instruction and some discipline. The difference is over where we emphasize that. And so at a fundamental level, that's where you'll find the biggest divide in education these days.
Okay. I have a question, and it's more from a personal perspective. And I've heard this argument a few times that not just necessarily just modern schools, but school systems in general are designed to create obedient workers, like line workers. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I've heard that too, and that's a common critique of the traditionalist side, where it's often said that the schools they're just using 19th century methods and it's factory model learning and such. I don't agree with that description, because I think what it does is I think it's a stereotype, a caricature, because you have to have a certain amount of order and structure. I mean, let's be honest here. Schools are educating hundreds of students. So you've got hundreds of students, kids coming in every day. A lot of schools will have 400, 500, 600. I mean, some schools have 2,000 students. You have to have a certain amount of order and structure. You have to have separate rooms where students are learning in. You can't just have hundreds of students all just doing their own thing.
Right.
And so, yes, you have to have a certain amount. You have to have rules. You have to have a certain amount of conformity. And to be blunt, I don't see that as having anything to do with training students to be obedient factory workers. It has everything to do with recognizing the reality that the system has to actually work. And that if you're going to have hundreds of students, and keep in mind, they're kids, they need rules, they need structure, and so schools need to provide that. And schools that don't provide that structure are schools that are going to really struggle. And so I just don't buy into the idea that the schools are just simply training obedient factory workers. We need to recognize the reality of the context that schools really do operate in.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The next part of school, how does the AI in education fit together? You hear some ideas, people saying, what's the point of anything? AI is taking over everything. Like, I wonder what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, AI or artificial intelligence, this is something that I've written about recently, a number of articles commenting on this. AI it's a real thing. It's not going away. I mean, I'm quite familiar with ChatGPT. I know that you can input the parameters of an essay and it'll spit out that essay pretty fast. And so the argument often is that, well, we don't need to have students write essays anymore because AI will just simply do it. I think this is kind of similar to the debate that happened in the 1970s about when calculators were brought in.
Okay.
And the idea that, well, why do we have students learn their multiplication tables anymore? Calculators can just do that. And we've seen very clearly that actually you still need to learn your fundamentals, your basics, because if you can't do stuff in your head, if you can't do basic multiplication in your head, you will struggle with complex algebraic equations, or frankly, even simple algebraic equations. And so you can have all the calculators you want. If you don't know facts in your brain regarding basic math, you are still going to struggle when you're dealing with more challenging math questions. So similarly, yes, AI, it is a problem as far as that students can use it to cheat. I don't think it needs to be banned entirely, because I think there's a place for it in certain contexts. And frankly, teachers can even use it in some cases. I've used it to a limited degree. I won't use it at this point, I haven't used it to make a test for students, but I have used it to create some review sheets where I'll feed in the basic test parameters and it'll actually produce some decent review sheets. I'll do that. But I don't think that AI will ever take the place of classroom teachers. AIs can't manage a class. AI can't, and AI is only as good as the information that is put into it. Right. AI makes a lot of mistakes. It hallucinates a lot. I would never trust something put out by ChatGPT as my primary source. I've even tested this out. I've even played around with it where I type in, tell me about Michael Zwaagstra, education author. And it'll get about half the stuff right and about half the stuff wrong. One time I tested that out and it had my degrees correct, but it said I got them from the University of Calgary, but I actually got them from the University of Manitoba. I mean, it makes stuff up. It gets things wrong. So some key ways we address it in schools. One of the most important things is to recognize that there are certain things we do in school that still are AI proof. that AI can't touch as long as we control it properly. And the key thing are unit tests. Students, when they write a test in class with pen and paper or pencil and paper, as long as it's in class on pen and paper and the teacher's supervising, it doesn't matter how much AI you used when you're working on assignments, that test is going to tell you pretty quickly whether students can do the assignment. And so what I tell teachers is make sure you're still doing unit tests, because there's your AI proof, your AI proof type assessment where you don't have to worry that AI has been used to influence this. As far as written assignments, that's more challenging. One thing that I've done as a teacher is I've rewritten some of the essay type questions that I'll assign students. So no longer will I have students, write a 4-page paper about a Canadian Prime Minister or an American president, because that is so easy. You just put that into AI and it'll pop that out right away. Now I'll tend to put in questions about, I'll ask about something we discussed in class the other day, and then say, give your opinion about what was said during class and for or against. A lot harder to use AI to cheat with that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, or I'll have a guest speaker in, and students have to analyze what the guest speaker had to say. Again, AI can't do that for them. It's not foolproof, but it's a lot harder. And the idea is to make it harder for students to cheat, because if you make it hard enough for them to cheat, most of them will go, well, maybe I should just do the assignment. That's easier. And that's what I'm going for. So AI is here. It is not going anywhere. It will be around for a while. But no, it doesn't mean the end of education, and it certainly does not mean an end to the role of teacher as the key instructor in the classroom.
Okay. I guess similarly could be applied for everyday life, right? Like I've had a discussion with people, and sometimes you feel obligated to explain, well, I use AI for that. And I wanted to quickly summarize something and then use that. And one example that I have used, and it's kind of low, but it's like, I don't drive with a horse and buggy anywhere. I use my car. Like, you use the tools that are available to you to your best advantage, right?
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with using AI. I mean, one of the things is that there are certain contexts where it's important to disclose it. So if you're using it for something that's official, like whether it's an assignment or like something in your work, then I do think it's important to disclose that AI provided, this is done with AI assistance. And but at the end of the day, it's a tool that we can use. I mean, I don't apologize for using a calculator when if I'm adding something up. Of course, I use a calculator, and I don't have to disclose every time that I happen to use a calculator. But as long as we're not losing sight of the fundamentals, and as long as we're not becoming excessively dependent on it, because I am concerned about the prospect of people being so used to AI that they lose the ability to write their own things. That does concern me in the long run, because writing is an important skill. It's a great way to become better at critical thinking and analysis, is going through the process of actually writing. Like when I write my column for the Carillon every week, for example, I can say with 100% truthfulness, I've never used AI when I'm writing my columns. I write my own stuff, and I'm going to keep writing my own stuff. I frankly would feel cheated if I used AI to write the articles that I write.
A little bit more on that. Like Jordan Peterson, he is a big proponent to self-author, right? Like just dealing with everyday things, like even almost in a way just helping to deal with what's going on in your mind. I think he has a couple courses on that, or he focuses on that. So it's I guess it kind of goes in line with kind of you were saying, that the concern of what it's going to do to us as a society if we completely depend on that rather than use it as an engine, right?
Yeah, if you become overly dependent on AI, that's a problem. And it's a problem if you're overly dependent on any tool. I mean, right. If you get to the point where you actually don't know how to do something anymore because you're only just using the tool, I think that's where you run into a problem. And so, and that's where we do need to be careful. And AI is great for certain things. I mean, if you're just writing a generic cover letter for an application or whatever, or if you're just, let's say you're providing some generic greetings at some event and you just use AI to help give you a basic framework because it's pretty standard. I mean, that's acceptable. That's not uncommon. But if you're using AI to write your book, or you're using AI to write something for you that requires some real analysis and in-depth thought, that gets more problematic. Again, you can use it as a tool to get ideas, But if you're going to hand something in, or if you're going to submit something at work or whatever context, you better make sure that you can stand by every word that you submit. And so be careful if you're using AI, because it does get things wrong, and you need to be accountable for what you choose to write.
Right. Well, that's kind of been my thoughts or concerns to an extent. I like good books that it need to be somewhat simple. Like Jordan Peterson's book, I have a hard time reading them because they're very complex. But in general, like, my concern has been, like, if I buy a book to learn something, will I need to be aware of that in the future going forward? Is this actually a book that's going to help me, or just somebody quickly told AI write me something about the subject?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, and I will say that if you're on social media, if you're reading like Facebook posts, there's a lot of AI happening there, a lot, and that's why that shouldn't be your only reading. If all you're doing is reading online stuff, you better believe there's a whole lot of AI being used. If you're reading more in-depth books, it's a lot harder for AI to do that. Okay. It's a lot harder for AI to write the kind of book that, well, as you mentioned, Jordan Peterson writes, or frankly, any other sort of well-known author. I would never trust AI to write as well as C.S. Lewis or J.R.R. Tolkien, for example. Right. I mean, that requires the human spark of ingenuity that I don't think that AI is anywhere close to getting to.
Okay, excellent. So let's go a little bit into theology, teaching at Steinbach Bible College. Like, what brought that on?
Well, I've been involved in Steinbach Bible College for a long time. Even prior to teaching there on a part-time basis, I had served on the board. I'm actually still on the board at Steinbach Bible College. And back in 2014, 2015, I decided to get a second master's degree. I have one master's degree in educational administration. That's from the University of Manitoba. And then I decided to get a second master's degree in theological studies from Liberty University. And part of the reason that I pursued that degree was it's a combination of personal interest in theology and in the Bible, but also I knew that I needed a master's degree in a theological area in order to teach at the college level in that area. And so when I acquired that degree in 2015 or 2016, I had spoken with the Steinbach Bible College academic dean and said, that I'm willing to teach a course. And so we set that up, and my very first course at Steinbach Bible College was on the topic of Christian ethics. I had, I think, about 24 students in the class, and it was a lot of fun. It was a one-credit course, so it was a series of evening classes. And the thing about that class and every subsequent in-person class that I teach at the Bible College is that it's a mix of students. It's a combination of young first and second year students at the Bible College and people from the community, including pastors and even some retired pastors. And so I've had classes. I mean, I remember one course that I did on the topic of the different views on predestination and free will. I mean, I had, again, 18 and 19-year-old students in it, and I had well-known theology experts like Dr. Harvey Plett, former chancellor and president of Steinbach Bible College, in that class. And you have some fantastic class discussions where you've got retired pastors and theologians in the class alongside some young college students. And that's one of the most fun things about teaching those evening courses at Steinbach Bible College, is I get such an interesting mix of students.
And then recently you started teaching on Christian Zionism, and what's your take on Israel? That's obviously been a hot topic. You see big online commentators going at each other head to head, like calling each other names and opinions.
Yes, very controversial topic, and became even more controversial after October 7th, 2023, the attack of Hamas on Israel at that time. I proposed a course to the current academic dean at Steinbach Bible College, titled the course, Two Views on Christian Zionism. Did God Give Modern Israel to the Jews? And this has been my best attended course so far. What was the number? I think it was around 40 students in the class, and about a third of them were taking it for credit, and then the remaining students were auditing. And it was such an interesting group, because I had students that were hardcore pro-Israel, hardcore pro-Zionist, and I had students there that were very critical of Israel and were definitely not Zionist. And so I had both sides reflected in the class. So this was not a one-sided class,
Okay.
and it wouldn't have worked as a one-sided class because I had students on opposite sides. And so I made a point of making sure that I presented the best arguments for the Zionist view, for the pro-Israel side, and then tried to present on another evening the strongest arguments that I could against Israel and how things are being handled, and for more pro-Palestinian, and really tried to sort of engage the students in that discussion. And so there's a saying in a lot of Christian apologetic circles that I very much agree with, and that's if you want to critique another position, you need to understand it first. And one of the best ways to understand the other side is that you need to be able to describe it so well that you are steel manning it. Steel manning means you've probably heard of straw manning. When you straw man means you're presenting like a weaker version of the other side just to make it look silly. Okay. So you argue against it by knocking down something that people on the other side don't really believe, but you kind of laugh about it, make them look silly. Steel manning is the opposite. Steel manning is where you present the other side with such forcefulness that it sounds like you hold to that view. And so that's the approach that I took when I taught this course. And at the end of that class, like when we were all done, at the very end, I did give students the chance they could ask me my views, but I first had them take a guess. Did they think that I was a Zionist or that I was not a Zionist? And it was split roughly down the middle as far as what they thought I was. They really, unless they had read some of my stuff earlier, if they just came into the class cold, not having done a whole lot of reading in terms of things that I've written or commented on, and they just were in the class for the presentation, most students in the class really didn't know. And I consider that a job well done. If I'm able to present a multiple views course, and at the end of it, students are left guessing, well, I wonder what his actual opinion is. And, at the end of the course, I will tell them. But I make it a point of, I'm not doing the course for the purpose of trying to change people's minds. The point of that course and other courses I've taught at Steinbach Bible College is to help students understand that people, and Christians in particular, can come to different conclusions on some of these topics. And that this way students will come out of the class, even if their mind hasn't changed, at least better understanding where other Christians are coming from. That was really the goal.
You figured about half of the people thought you were pro and the other one were on the other side. Do you find it were the people that themselves held to the views, or was it just in general?
Within that class, it was actually in general, as far as because there were definitely some students that were more pro-Zionist that had thought that it sounds like he's not Zionist, and there were some students that were like on the other side and thought that I was on the opposite side from them. And so it was kind of funny, just sort of with that. But again, with that type of course, especially if I'm going to call it a two views class, I want to make sure that the different views get a fair representation. And so what I would do is I'd set aside an evening, I'd make the case for Zionism as strongly as I could for the first hour and a half. We take a break, I come back, and then I do everything I can to rip it apart, point out all the weak points. Following session, I make the strongest case I can against Zionism. Go as hard as I can, we take a break, I come back, the last hour, I rip apart those arguments the best that I possibly can. And that's the approach that I've taken with each of the multiple views courses that I've taught. So I've done courses on 3 views on hell, 4 views on, or 3 views on predestination and free will. I've done, a couple years ago, I did 3 views on the creation evolution debate. And in each of those, very similar format, where I make it clear that, look, you're here to be challenged. You're all going to feel uncomfortable at some point. Like I tell the students very bluntly that if you're here to have your opinion reaffirmed, you're going to like part of this class, and you're not going to like the other part. But if you're here because you genuinely want to really understand where others are coming from, you'll probably like the whole course at that point. So that's kind of and I'm very upfront with students that that's what they're getting into when they take these courses.
So you might come in like with an idea, I'm going to learn better how to defend my case.
Right. And you will, because I will present the strongest case that I can for whatever their view is, but they're also going to be exposed to a pretty hard-nosed critique where I'm going to hit their side really hard, and they're going to feel uncomfortable. And so, yes, I think in the end, you will actually come out of it stronger, because now you know what you're up against. Like, now you know how Christians can read the same Bible in many of these cases and come to some different conclusions. And to be clear, it doesn't mean that I think that, okay, all of these views are all equally correct. I'm not a postmodernist. I don't believe that truth is relative. I believe that there are absolutes. I think there are things that are correct and things that are wrong. And in each of these multiple views courses, I do hold a view. And in most of these cases, I hold a particular view quite strongly. I mean, some of them I'm a little softer in my view, but I'm pretty. I do have a firm opinion. But that doesn't stop me from being able to understand that, look, you can be a Christian and you can come to a different opinion on this topic. I think you're wrong, but that doesn't mean that I have to assume that you're a bad Christian. And that's the key thing, is that understanding that people can in good faith disagree. And you find this when you look in the Bible, you'll find that this is how the apostles dealt with difficult topics. A classic example would be Acts 15, where the apostles are having the great debate about, do the Gentiles, the non-Jews who are becoming Christians, do they have to get circumcised and follow the law of Moses? If you read that chapter, you will notice that they engaged in days of vigorous debate. And then at the end of it, the Apostle Peter, he stands up and he gives his speech, and he concludes by saying, it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us not to burden you beyond this. And he does come down on a clear side where, no, the Gentiles do not have to be circumcised and they don't have to follow the law of Moses, and they write a letter to that effect. But the process by which it happened was not simply God speaking from heaven and saying, guys, stop arguing, here's the answer. Actually, he let the apostles debate and argue because God gave us brains. He expects us to use our brains. And if the apostles had to debate and wrestle with the biblical text and get into some heated discussions, and these are the guys who either knew Jesus or knew the people who knew Jesus, and they are wrestling with this and having to debate and reflect on the scriptures, well then, how much more so today? We're going to have to do that. We're going to have to wrestle with it. And so we have to read our Bibles, we have to think things through, and we have to be willing to at least look at how other Christians read the same text. Otherwise, we're only going to get a one-sided perspective.
Well, a thought that comes to mind is John the Baptist. Like, he at one point just sends his disciples to Jesus and asks him, hey, are you really the guy who's supposed to come or not? And Jesus did not say, how dare you? You know who I am. You leaped in your mother's womb before, so how dare you question me? And that's not the answer that.
Well, exactly. Jesus said, go back and tell John the Baptist that that the lame are healed, the lame walk, and the sick are healed, and the dead are raised. And then Jesus turns to the crowd and he says to them, what did you expect to see? Like a reed broken in the wind? No, I tell you that that there is no man born to woman greater than John. So Jesus, he definitely affirmed John. And so he did not respond by saying, boy, John, I'm so disappointed in you, dummy. It's obvious. He told his disciples, he said, go back to John and say, here's what you see. Here's what is happening. And that's the answer that John needed. And then Jesus, reminds the people around that don't think John the Baptist is a dummy. He's actually like the greatest man who's lived to this point. So, do not think less of him because he asked this question.
Yeah. And it's Jacob too, he becomes he gets his real name, or he gets renamed by God after he wrestles with God.
Right.
So, I feel like in modern day too, in so-called Christianity, we have this idea we are not allowed to question things.
Yep.
This is how it's supposed to be. This is, either this is what a pastor said, or this is what we always been taught.
The Bible is filled with times where men of God and people of God asked very difficult questions. I mean, you're right. Jacob did wrestle with God, and he was renamed Israel. Yeah. And Israel means he who strives with God. That's what Israel means. And if you read the book of Job as another example, where Job asked some really tough questions, and God commended him at the end and said, actually, that your three friends, they did not speak what was right of me, because they had the simple, easy, pat answers. Job, you're the one who spoke what is right, so you go offer a sacrifice for them, because they're the ones who have sinned. And I mean, you read Psalms. I mean, Psalms is filled with the various psalmists, including King David, saying, my Lord, why have you forsaken me? Having honest wrestlings with God. I mean, this is who we are as people. This is how we're made in God's image. This is how we are designed. And God wants us to think and to reflect and to research and to question and to debate. And that's what we see in the Bible. So we should not be the least bit concerned by the fact that when we're reading our Bible that it's tough to understand at times. Keep in mind the Apostle Peter said this about Paul's writings, where in 2 Peter he references, the writings of our beloved brother Paul.
Yeah.
His writings are difficult to understand at times. This is Peter. Peter's one of the apostles. You'd think that he would perfectly understand. And he's saying, some of the stuff Paul writes, that's kind of hard. Well, if Peter can say that, we can say that, and that's okay.
Openly critiquing it. Teaching controversial topics, we talked about that a little bit, and how to present multiple views fairly. I guess my question on all that would be kind of, is that okay for me to form an opinion without educating myself properly first? Like, for example, I'm going to use one, conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always thought I had to be a conservative, and I still would lean conservative.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you learn, it's more like it's not as black and white as you think it is, especially not if you think political party.
Right.
Like the word conservatism is different. Like even liberalism is like they're different than what the party stands for nowadays.
Yeah.
Should a person take? I guess my question is still like, should a person take a stand without educating himself properly first?
I think you should educate yourself. I think it's better to take a stand if you know why you're standing. I mean, you may still get some things right. You may guess right, even if you haven't done any research. I mean, a stop clock is right twice a day, so you might just guess right, and maybe you'll just happen to be born into the family that's got all the right opinions and everything. But there's a good chance you're going to be wrong about stuff. And so I think it's incumbent on us as Canadians, as Christians, as people, to take the time to reflect and to research. Doesn't mean we have to be experts in everything. No one can be an expert on everything. But if you're going to forcefully advocate for something, you should at least know why you're advocating it. And you should have at least some understanding of, okay, so people who disagree with me, why do they believe what they do? Because it'll frankly make you a better advocate. Like if you really want to push for your side, you're far more likely to persuade people if you don't sound like an idiot when you're talking to people on the other side. And people who disagree with you, they can tell very quickly if you don't have a clue how they really think. I mean, if you're trying to argue with them and you're basically just picking apart a straw man and you're attacking stuff that they don't actually believe, or you're explaining it in ways that they would never explain themselves, you may think you're winning an argument, but you're really not. And you're not persuading anyone. So what are you doing? I guess you're strengthening yourself, but that doesn't really help anyone. So yes, I do think it's a good idea to educate ourselves and to think things through.
Do you think it's helpful to have conversations or even friends with opposing views?
Yes, absolutely. Some of my best and closest friends are people who totally disagree with me on some very fundamental things. I have friends who are atheists. I have friends who are in the NDP, in the Liberal Party. And I'm not just talking about like token friends where I'm friends with them just so I can say I'm friends with these. At my wedding, my best man is an atheist who's high up in the NDP in another province, and we're still close friends to this day. And we disagree on almost every major fundamental topic. But when we get together, we're not insulting each other. We've developed a good, close, personal friendship. And when we debate things, we do it in a respectful way. And that doesn't mean it doesn't get heated, because we will have heated discussions. But neither of us ever worries that, the other, he's going to get offended because I said this. No, because when you have a real friendship with someone, you're not spending your time worrying about whether you're offending them. And so, absolutely, we should not limit our friendships to just people that we happen to agree with. Your world gets very small and very insular when you do that. And one of the worst ways to do that is to do it on social media and make sure follow only people who agree with you, and you get your own little echo chamber happening, and that gets toxic so quickly. Even on social media, I make a point of, on X, used to be called Twitter. I make a point of following people that are similar to me and people who are different from me. So if I'm checking out the feed, I want to see what people are saying. I'm not just getting one side. You really do need to get exposed to positions other than your own. And yes, you should be friends with people who disagree with you.
Okay. So in that sense too, like, I think the general consensus often is, or at least that's how, and I want to be careful how I word this. I want to say the media wants us to be, but that's like, even that's a poor choice of wording. But as a society, part of us feels like the world wants us to be divided. So,
yeah, we do see. I mean, social media amplifies this, and it because these algorithms they reward based on clicks, and so if you put something that's like you have your zinger and you put it out, you're going to get more clicks and you'll get more likes, and that gives you that boost of the endorphins or whatever that kind of make you feel good, and then you become the ultimate keyboard warrior. That's not good in terms of developing you as a well-rounded human being. And so it really is incumbent on us to make a reasonable effort to make sure that we're not just in our own little echo chambers. And this is something I've said to my students over the years. It's something I say, that I'll say with people that I work with and that I know. I'm just not interested in only talking to people that I happen to agree with, because it's just not that you really aren't getting a full picture if you're only with people that you agree with at all times.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that clarifies it better too, and that kind of brings me back to what I was trying to say, or I was thinking. The idea of the opposite side is out to destroy me.
Right.
Right. Like the right might say that, the left might say that, or even like in different religious organizations, like that side is here to destroy me, and vice versa. And
most of the time, and again, there are definitely there are serious world conflicts that are happening, and there's real warfare and all that. And yes, sometimes people on the other side literally are trying to destroy you. I mean, World War II, both sides there was definitely real destruction that was happening. But in most cases, especially in our context here in Canada, when we're talking about our political system, the vast majority of people who are in politics aren't going into politics for the primary purpose of destroying people. There's no one who runs for public office going, I really want to wreck this country, and I really want to wreck this city. How can I do that? No one goes into politics thinking that.
Right.
And so I do try to remind myself of this, that especially as I look at, the possibility of going into provincial politics, which is more partisan than the municipal politics that I've been in for 20 years, that even though, yes, you have a side, and I'm a conservative, I'm proud to be a conservative, and I'll defend the conservative side, it's important for me to remember that, the NDP, they're not bad people. They're people that I disagree with, and I think their policies are bad for the province, but that doesn't make someone a bad person. That means that, that I think that the policies that I support and that the political party that I'm in has better policies, that's where I prefer to focus the argument. And so, yes, you will, on all sides, in all parties, you will find some people that have bad motives. Absolutely. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have jails. Of course, we've got people who really do bad things, and yet we need to make sure we protect innocent people from people who are really doing bad things. But the vast majority of people aren't criminals. The vast majority of people aren't going into politics with bad motives. And as Proverbs says, like a soft answer turns away wrath.
Yeah.
You don't, and I really like the way the Apostle Paul puts it in Romans 12. I think it's verse 17 around there, where he says, so far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Yeah. And I may not have that's the correct quote, but I try to remember which letter that's in. But so far as it depends on you, so you can't control how other people feel. You can't control how other people act. What you can control is how you act and how you respond to others, so far as it depends on you. And so, to the greatest degree possible, what can I do to not escalate things? And now I want to be clear, I haven't always gotten this right. I don't even get it right all the time now. I certainly, like when 15, 20 years ago when I started in politics, I got this wrong a lot in my younger years. I think I've gotten better at this as I've gotten older, and I still have learning to do on this. And but again, what can we do as individuals to try to move things forward in a positive way? And one of the most important things is focus on the ideas and on the issues rather than on the personalities and just seeing the other side as a group of people that you have to attack all the time.
I should be heading into the political subject already, but I have just a short follow-up question, if I may. Like on the last thing, I was reading a book recently, and it was talking about. I'm not sure where it comes from, but it suggests it's like to Christianity in general, like maybe more modern, the idea of good and evil. If you would read like the whole book, like Torah and the New Testament, everything, it is not as simple as good and evil. There's almost like 3 levels of, like there's like perfect, like good, holy, whatever you want to call it. And there's evil, and then there's where most people fit in somewhere in between. What would be your thought on this? Like, I guess it's, in a way, my thought is like a follow-up on what you were saying already about people's intent.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain amount of nuance, and I would encourage everyone, Christians in particular, spend some time reading the Old Testament, particularly the narrative books. Some of my favorite books for many years in the Old Testament have been 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, where it's just so fascinating to see the personalities involved. And yes, each king is described as either he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, or he did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord. And then, but you read the stories and you find that the kings who did what was right, they weren't perfect. They didn't do what was right in everything. And similarly, the kings who did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord, they had moments of goodness too. They still, their reign is still summarized as, okay, they led Israel or Judah astray. But even within those stories, you do find that there is a certain amount of nuance. And now there are other parts of the Bible where, especially when it's dealing with grave sin and all that, it's not nuanced. It's very clear. There's clear denunciations. Jesus in the New Testament, if you read Matthew 23, for example, there's no nuance there when he's condemning the hypocrisy of many of the religious leaders, such as the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. Now, he wasn't condemning all the beliefs of the Pharisees, because a lot of their beliefs are actually correct, right. But he was definitely condemning in some of the harshest possible terms hypocrisy, because hypocrisy is one of the key things that'll turn people away from God the fastest, is when you see someone who claims to be a follower of God and then they're a hypocrite. Well, that'll turn people away really fast, and that deserves some serious condemnation. And so, but yes, there is definitely a lot of nuance in the Bible, in the stories themselves, because the Bible is a real book, a real collection of books describing real historical events, people who actually lived. And because it's describing people who actually lived, it's describing both their strengths and their weaknesses. It's not a collection of fairy tales that just sort of tells us some stories to make us feel good or to feel bad. It's a description of the lives of real people, in many cases who are doing their best, or in other cases not doing their best. And you see how the effects of their choices play out in their lives.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you. So the political jump. What made you want move into like a provincial level, seeking the nomination of MLA?
Yeah, it's something I thought about for some time, and like I was with Kelvin Gertsen when he was first elected MLA back in 2003, and I have personally campaigned with him in every election since then. I've been to a lot of party events and annual general meetings. I've also been the president of the Steinbach PC Association for many years, since 2018, and then prior to that, I was the vice president. And so I've been interested in provincial politics. When Kelvin announced that he was not running again, I obviously had to give some very serious thought. And I thought that, Kelvin has done such an excellent job of representing our constituency. The Steinbach constituency, that includes Steinbach, Mitchell, and Blumenort, and everything in between. And he's provided, effective representation reflecting our values, understanding where compromises need to be made, working with people at other levels of government. And our constituency needs someone who is willing to carry on that kind of legacy. And so I felt that, okay, with my 20 years of experience in city council and my writing and teaching and in the community, and also working with Kelvin in so many different areas, I thought that it was a logical switch to make. It's a tough decision, because if I do get elected MLA, I obviously won't be able to continue on city council, right. And I wouldn't be able to continue in my teaching position either, because MLA is a full-time position. But I think it's important that we have strong representation in the legislature, and I believe that I can provide that representation.
Okay. So what is it you think Steinbach needs provincially, or like the province in general, like something that you can bring to the table?
Well, we need someone in the legislature who understands our area, who understands that the real challenges that we see with growth, that we need investments from the province in regards to our infrastructure. I mean, within the next few years, as one example, the city of Steinbach is going to have to build a wastewater treatment plant. That's is very, very expensive. We can't do that without significant provincial support. Both Blumenort and Mitchell, which are part of the arm of Hanover, they're growing communities as well, and there's investments that they are going to need. And so we need someone in the legislature who understands the challenges that the growth is bringing and who can advocate effectively. We also need someone who understands some of the things that make our area unique. We need someone who respects the important role that churches and that the faith-based community has in our region, and is willing to affirm that and recognize that importance. Our area is also unique in that we have such a strong entrepreneurial spirit. We have so many businesses and startup businesses and such, and that means we need someone who knows the importance of loosening regulations on businesses and encouraging the success of our businesses, and understands the importance of lower taxes so that way businesses can thrive. Right. We have a lot of families. We have a very young region. We have a lot of young kids, and so and a lot of younger families, and so we need someone who understands that reality. And so those are areas that I do have some knowledge in and some experience in, and so those are things that I will hope to take with me in if I get the PC nomination and if I become MLA. Those are the kinds of things that I would hope to be able to take to the legislature.
How does education, theology, and politics connect for you?
Well, they are all different facets of who I am. I mean, they're all areas that are important to me, and there's actually more overlap than a lot of people might initially think. I mean, how I think about politics and my general conservative philosophy, because that is something that has remained constant as far as that I recognize the reality that government can't do everything, and that we need to limit government so that way the private sector isn't unreasonably stifled. A lot of that dovetails very nicely with my recognition in my Christian theology that people are imperfect, and that we can't put all of our trust in politicians to run everything. And that also happens to dovetail with my fairly traditional educational philosophy, where I recognize that students, if you don't provide them with clear direction, will often go astray and get into trouble and not do the things that they're supposed to do. And so, where you have all three of those areas where if you can actually see pretty clearly how it all fits together as far as a general philosophy, a general worldview. It affects my thinking about theology, about education, and about politics.
Okay, let's go towards a lighter subject. What do you do for fun, hobbies?
Well, I mean, this will sound kind of weird, but I do find politics fun. I mean, when I go to council meetings, it is actually quite enjoyable. And so people often ask me, how much time do you spend on city council? And my answer always is, I've never tracked it. You don't track the hours when you're doing something you really enjoy. And so I do enjoy it. I mean, I have my limits too. It's not, I don't enjoy everything about it, but I do, generally speaking, I look forward to the council meetings. I mean, I enjoy getting together with my council colleagues and debating and discussing and figuring things out. I do like to read. I mean, this is something that I've done, for many, many years. What do I read? Usually politics and theology. Those are kind of my two main areas. I will read as well political memoirs. I like those, biographies. I will do that. Other recreation, this one might surprise some people, although people who know me won't be surprised. I do like to play poker. I play tournaments. I do like to play poker tournaments. And there's actually if being skilled in politics totally helps you when you're playing poker, because you have to sort of be able to read people, and you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them, as we say. So yes, I do like to play, and I do play charity poker tournaments, and those are a lot of fun, and I find that's a good way to relieve a lot of stress.
For some reason, I can totally imagine it right now. What are some good books that you read recently that you would recommend?
Yeah, I just finished reading I'm trying to remember the exact title. It was 5 Views on Christian Apologetics by, trying to remember, there were multiple authors of the book. I mean, but yeah, it was just published this year, and just going over the difference between cultural apologetics, ecclesial apologetics, evidential. I won't get into all that, but I just finished reading that. I'm currently reading a book on William Lyon Mackenzie King, which was also just published this year. The editor, I believe, is Patrice Dutil. And trying to remember the title. And I'm currently, let's see here. I mean, I'm about to read a book about how World War II impacted the writings of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. That was also a book that was just published, and so that's one I actually just bought, and I'm about to start reading that. And so, so I do like to read. I don't get to read as much as I'd like often because I'm busy. I do a lot of stuff, but I do try to to keep my thinking fresh, and by doing as much reading as I reasonably can.
I guess the follow-up question on the hobbies was like, how do you try with everything going on? But I think you answered that. Yeah,
a lot of it is just about you just have to sort of set priorities and sort of know that what your limits are. And I have really worked over the years, and I think I've become pretty good at becoming efficient. A lot of this is about, for example, as a teacher, I mark fast. I don't. If students get handed an assignment, I mark it right away. I don't let things pile up. I don't procrastinate.
Okay.
If you don't procrastinate, it's amazing what you can get done. I used to have a serious procrastination problem. That's actually why my first year at university wasn't successful. It's because I procrastinated. And I was so embarrassed at dropping out that first year that I'm going to go back. I decided I'm going back to university. I'm going to stop procrastinating. And I actually did. I actually did all the assignments right away. And I found that, my marks went way up and I'm getting these scholarships now. Look at this. And I just had to do my work right away. And so I've just kept that ever since. And so whether it's in the classroom and I'm marking stuff right away, or I'm prepping stuff well in advance, or whether it's in politics where I'm making sure that I'm doing my research long before I actually need to be ready for it. And if someone sends me a message or calls, I try to respond as quickly as I can. So when you had sent me an email asking me to join you on this podcast, I'm pretty sure I responded within about an hour.
I was surprised. That was quick.
That's because why do it later if you can do it now? Yeah. And so that is the approach I take, and you really do actually have a lot more free time when you stop procrastinating. Because what happens is if you procrastinate, is that not only do you still have to do the work, but now you've got all this mental energy you've wasted thinking about the fact you have to do it in the future, and it wrecks your leisure. But then when you're actually trying to do it, you're kind of grumbling, and you're doing it while you're watching TV, and then of course you're only half focused. That's a terrible way to do it. Just if you got to do something, just do it right away. Your life will be a whole lot easier, and I found that's something that's helped me.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's something I need to learn to apply for myself. Definitely a little bit more. Is there a particular vision you have when you become MLA?
Well, part of my vision would be, first of all, I recognize that Kelvin Gertson has left huge shoes to fill. If I could be half as good as Kelvin, he is about as good as they get in terms of quality of politician and representative. There's a lot that I've learned from him, so I look at his example and go, okay, I would like to at least be able to emulate some of that. As far as some specific, other things, I do want to see our region get support from other levels of government for the projects that we need, so that way growth can happen. I want to see our population in our area continue to grow. I want to see new businesses, and particularly some large businesses like more manufacturing, for example, come to our area to provide more jobs. I would like to see a government that is smaller and that is less intrusive, and that lets people keep more of their own money. Because for the vast majority of things, you can spend your money more efficiently on yourself than the government can spend your money. When someone else spends your money on someone else, which is basically how taxes work, that's where you get a lot of the waste and inefficiency. Yeah. But if you, however, are able to make your own choices with your own money, then you're a whole lot more likely to get things done that you need to get done. Doesn't mean the government doesn't have a role. Of course it does. Yeah. Yes, there are areas where the government needs to step in, needs to do things. But we need to be clear about defining what those areas are. And if there's something that the government doesn't need to be involved in, then let's get the government out of it. Yeah. And let the private sector do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Because I think in general, obviously there are people that are greedy. I'm just going to call it what it is. But in general, I think people are very good in reinvesting their money into the community because they want their money to stay in the community, and they want the money to do good, right?
Yep. And I look at someone who's successful and has become wealthy. I don't look at it as, I'm jealous, and the government should take their money away. We should just tax them more and take all their money. Like, no, actually, I want them to invest their money.
Yeah.
I want them, because in many cases they are putting their money back into their business, and things will grow and expand. And it's this short-sighted, and this is where I disagree with the political left and with the NDP. They think that if someone becomes wealthy, that there's something wrong and that the government needs to take their money away. Well, no, what's wrong is when the government is taking people's money away. And because now what happens is that people are now going, well, I guess I'd better not earn this money. I'm not going to expand my business, or I'm going to move my money out of the country or out of the province to get away from this government. And the wealthier you are, the easier it becomes for you to do that, because you can hire the best accountants that help you do it. And that's why the evidence is actually quite clear that when governments raise the top tax rate by significant amounts, revenues often go down, because wealthy people just find their ways of hiding their wealth. When the top tax rate is actually at a reasonable level, they're more likely to just pay it. And then revenues in some cases go up. And so we need to stop looking at this from an angle of jealousy and going, oh, that person is successful in their business and that's not fair. And instead going, how can we help more people be successful like that successful business person? And that's the kind of conservative philosophy that I have when I look at it, going that we want more people to be successful. This is not a zero-sum game. This isn't a fixed pie where only a certain number of people are allowed to be successful. I want everyone to be successful. And the way to have everyone successful is not for the government to do everything. Yeah. That's how you make everyone unsuccessful.
Yeah. I think a common misconception is like exactly one part being about taxing the rich. Any expense that's created on the top will trickle down to the consumer, right? Like you see that for example, store prices, like anything. Yep. If you raise a certain tax, it will trickle down to me buying avocados tomorrow or whatever.
When you impose taxes and regulations on businesses, those prices get those costs get passed on to the consumer, and the people who suffer the most are the people with the lowest income, who are having to go to the grocery store and now they can't afford to buy fruit and vegetables and whatever else because the costs have gone up, because that tax on, whether it's the carbon tax the consumer carbon tax we used to have, or whether it's just the some special corporate tax or whatever you want to call it, the more taxes and restrictions and regulations you put on businesses, the more consumers end up paying in the end, and you actually end up hurting the people that you're trying to help.
I hope you get in. What you said too is like said earlier, it takes so much to change things, right? Like it's not coming in, like one person coming in now that will change. Like right. I think we as people often have that hope of, if we get a new prime minister, it's going to change overnight, and it's just going to take so much. Like one person comes in, even like a new party, a different party, it takes a lot of work.
No one person can change everything, and no one is perfect. No party is perfect. Yeah. I'm not under any illusions that if I become MLA that everything's going to get fixed. Right. I go in there and I've got a lot to learn still, and I'm working within a system where there's a lot of challenges, and things won't happen as quickly as we'd like it to happen. But we all do the best that we can.
What keeps you motivated? Like keep on going and doing all of this?
Well, Steinbach is like a great area to represent. Like certainly my years in city council, we've just great people. Like when I go door knocking during elections, like that gives me energy. When I see things happening that are successful, I mean the recent opening of our Southeast Event Center, that was years in the making, and I got to play a role. I was one of the members of council that we actually helped. We were actually able to be there. I was there throughout the process where we actually together made this happen, and that wasn't just council doing it. It was in partnership with the private sector and with the other levels of government that came on board, after we'd lobbied and such. And now it's open, and now I can go to that Southeast Event Center and I look at it and I go, I got to play a role in this. It wasn't all me by any stretch, but I was part of it, and that really is really quite energizing.
Nice, excellent. Anything else you want to add as we close?
No. Well, actually, I will add one thing, that for anyone who is looking to support me in my bid to run for the PC nomination, just to be clear, only people who are Progressive Conservative Party members provincially are able to vote in the nomination race. So if you want to support me, you actually have to buy a party membership. Go to pcmanitoba.com and click on Become a Member. It costs $20, and that gives you a say in who your candidate will be. So if you live in Steinbach, Mitchell, Blumenort, or anywhere in between those three different communities, you are a part of the Steinbach constituency, And if you want to vote for me in a general election, I first have to get the nomination. And the only way that will happen is if people who support me get memberships and then come out to vote when the nomination vote happens sometime in the next few months.
Excellent. Where can people follow you, general work in your campaign?
Yeah, as far as my political aspect, michaelzwaagstra.ca is the website I have up. So Michael, and then Zwaagstra, Zwaagstra .ca, michaelzwaagstra.ca. You'll find just some basic info about me and some articles, some news articles about me, and also a link to where you can get a party membership. So in terms of the political aspect, go to michaelzwaagstra.ca. And frankly, beyond that, your best approach is probably just Google my name, and you'll find my articles. It's not hard to find. I mean, Zwaagstra is a rather distinctive name, and you'll find there's various think tanks that I've written for, so you can click on some of those, and you can find a collection of my articles. If you follow me on Facebook, I do post my Carillon articles there, or get yourself a subscription to the Carillon, and you can read my opinion article every week. So lots of different ways. Go to the City of Steinbach website on the council page, and you can find my profile on the page there too. So, but if you're interested in the political angle and in supporting me as a potential PC candidate, the most important thing is to go to michaelzwaagstra.ca, click on the link to becoming a party member, which will take you to the PC Manitoba website, and then click on there and pay the $20 and become a member. Is that what you can do to help me the most in terms of this particular race?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being on. I appreciate it very much. It was a very insightful conversation. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much, Pedro. I've enjoyed this very much, and all the best as you continue with your podcast.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching. See you next time.